A paradigm is nothing but a mass of habits or a mass of ideas that express themselves automatically without any conscious thought. And that paradigm keeps us going. It's in our subconscious mind. We gather information in our conscious mind, but it's the subconscious that moves the body. And if we don't change that paradigm, nothing happens. And you study life, and you study your mental faculties. That's real magic.
And abracadabra, by itself, means what you say becomes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just found out that,
that's interesting.
Last week from a magician. Said you know why I say abracadabra? What I say becomes. And I was like, that's right.
That's very good.
That's very good. So
what is abracadabra? What is it?
Abracadabra is when they do the trick.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean, what language does it come from?
It's the meaning of it. I don't know exactly, but it definitely means, if you search abracadabra on Wikipedia, it says meaning. What you say becomes. Which means your words create reality.
Sure.
Which is exactly. I don't know exactly, but it definitely means, if you search abracadabra on Wikipedia, it says meaning. What you say becomes. Which means your words create reality.
Sure.
Which is exactly what we're looking for. So I had so many questions, but I'm not gonna ask any of them. I think this is so interesting, so I want to keep the flow like this. I have a theory, and I want you to really elaborate on it. Most people say, "Oh, I'm depressed." There's some percentages in America, so many people
are depressed.
Yeah, and how can you be depressed? You're a human. You have the power to control your own will. How are you depressed? And what I think happens is when you cannot see a better future.
I can tell you exactly what happens. I can tell you exactly what happens.
What?
I quoted Andrew Carnegie a few minutes ago. He said, any idea that's held in the mind, that's emphasized, that's either feared or revered, begins at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate form available. Depression it starts out from ignorance, doubt, and worry. I've got a chart, I show it. Doubt and worry is on the negative side of life. Understanding is on the positive side. Right. Doubt and worry comes from ignorance. Understanding comes from knowledge, but you got to study to get it. Doubt and worry are a psychic disease. It's an intellectual exercise. They're using their intellectual factors to build a negative idea, and that's all they see. They take and internalize that, and they get emotionally involved with it. It goes from doubt and worry to fear. They've emotionalized the doubt or worry. Turns into fear. The fear is in the emotional mind, and the emotion must be expressed through the only instrument that can be expressed through the physical body. They've emotionalized the doubt or worry. Turns into fear. The fear is in the emotional mind, and the emotion must be expressed through the only instrument that can be expressed through the physical body. So it moves the body into a state we call anxiety. Anxiety is never expressed. Anxiety is suppressed.
You don't know
the suppression turns to depression. They bottle it up inside. They suppressed the fear. It turns into depression. The depression turns into disease. The disease turns into inside. They suppressed the fear. It turns into depression. The depression turns into disease. The disease turns into decay. St. Clair Lewis was right. He said, we don't die, we kill ourselves. Now, what is the opposite of all that? You'll go from ignorance to doubt and worry to fear, to anxiety, suppression, depression, disease, disintegration. Go over on the other side. You go from understanding to emotional state called faith. You just know it's going to move into form because you understand the law. Faith isn't believing something you can't see. Strange thing about faith and fear, they both demand you believe something you can't see. Why would people choose fear over faith? Because they're ignorant. So you go from understanding to faith. The faith manifests on the physical plane, not as anxiety, as well-being. The well-being is not suppressed, it's expressed. And the expression turns to acceleration. You're building energy. And that is because there's no dis-ease, you're at ease. And that turns into creation, not disintegration. It's all a mental trip that they're building. Now they go to the doctor gives them Valium or some kind of drug to cool them out. He gets them numb so they don't know what the hell they're doing. I could show anybody how to overcome depression, if they'll do it. But they got to do it. Ignorance, exactly what the person tells them.
Simple formula.
It's not very difficult. If it had been difficult, I wouldn't have figured it out.
Then what's stopping people?
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
That's all the problems in the world come from ignorance. That's the purpose of life, overcome ignorance, develop awareness. The only way to overcome ignorance is through knowledge. And the only way to get the knowledge is to study. Most people, they finish school, close the book, say, that's over, I'm never going to open another book as long as I live. They're screwed, it's all over. People understand where wants come from. That's when their life starts to change, I think. When we're kids, we go to mom or dad and we say, Mom, Dad, I want. and we tell them something, and they're busy doing something. They say, well, how are you going to do that? Well, of course, the kid hasn't got any idea, and because he can't say how he knows it, well, so he gives it up. And that's why when people grow up, when they want something, if they don't know how to do it, they let it go. They've been doing it since they were little kids. They were directed to let it go. There's no money. We don't know how to do it. We don't know the right people, so we let it go. So we don't go after what we want. Most people set goals to do what they think they can do. There's no inspiration in it. That's why 90% of them set a target and they quit. They set a target and quit. When you're going after your heart's desire, you don't quit.
And then, why most people don't get what they want out of life? Is it?
Well, they don't know what they want.
That's right.
You see, I got this, and then I got Earl Nightingale's condensed narration of this on a long playing record. And I'd listen to that record over and over and over again. One day, I was in the business, in the cleaning business. I had salespeople, and I had them listen to this record. Every morning we listened to this record. And one day I said, you know, I'd love to meet him. And I didn't know who Earl Nightingale was. He was a voice on a record. That was it. I didn't even know where he lived. And a young guy that worked with me, he said, no, you wouldn't. He said, if you wanted to meet him, you'd go and meet him. I thought, damn, he's right. So I phoned, and I got an appointment with him. Now, at the time, he was the most listened to man in the history of the broadcasting industry. He was a radio broadcaster. And not an easy guy to get to, but I got to meet with him for an hour. I flew to Chicago. I spent an hour with him. And when I was leaving, I said, Earl, what's the big deal? You know, I mean, what's it all about? He said, there's no big deal. He said, it's very simple. He says, simply decide what you love to do and then dedicate your life to it. He said, the problem with most people, they don't know what they love to do. They never take the time to sit and ask themselves. What they're doing is trying to, I think I can get earn good money here. I could do it. You know, it's where can they earn some money? It's not what they love to do. Well, I was sitting there. Now, I had offices all over the place. I had a lot of people. I was earning a lot of money. And I got excited because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I'm going to do what he was doing. And I made up my mind sitting in his office. That'd be somewhere around 1965. That I was going to go back and I was going to work with him. And in 1968, I moved to Chicago. I left my own company. I moved to Chicago and I started to work with him.
Why?
Because I wanted to. I had to move my whole family. I had to get a green card. I had to move my whole family to Chicago from Toronto. But I got a double benefit out of it because I got to work with his partner too, Lloyd Conant. Lloyd Conant was a giant of a man. What a great guy. And he and Earl both mentored me. See, any success I've had because I've got great mentors. And I'm a good student. Now, until I was 26, I was a terrible student. When I picked up this book, I became a great student. I've got thousands of books. I have an office at home in my home. It's got a couple of thousand books in it, and then I built a studio, and I've got a couple of thousand books in the studio. I love reading. But the success that I've enjoyed is because of the mentors or the coaches I've had. I would do exactly what they tell me. And if I coach somebody today and they don't do exactly what I tell them, I don't coach them anymore. Just like that, it's all over.
It's not ready.
Well, it's not that only that they're not ready, but if I'm going to coach somebody and they're not doing what I tell them, I'm wasting my time and theirs too. Now, if they want to waste their time, that's their prerogative. I'm not going to waste mine. And if there's no belief, it ain't going to happen. See, when you believe it, you're encased in the idea. You fuse with the idea. And that makes all kinds of things happen.